Hi everybody, this is SAAD for the SAAD Truth. I was not planning on releasing a clip today as I'm away on a family vacation, albeit interspersed with some professional appearances. Uh, that said, there is a rapidly unfolding situation at Google, which I thought it might be worthwhile for me to briefly weigh in on. Before I do so, let me mention that on July 21st, I was honored and delighted to have been invited to Google, to their main campus in Mountain View, to deliver a lecture, which I happily agreed to do, given the wonderful forum that they provide for all sorts of people with interesting ideas. And so I took the challenge and went up there and I gave a talk specifically on my evolutionary consumption research, my scientific career, whereby one of the issues, of course, that arises when I discuss my scientific career is all sorts of innate and evolved sex differences. And so it's quite ironic that what is unfolding now at Google deals ultimately with exactly this issue. For those of you who don't know, a Google employee had authored a memo wherein he was discussing some of the reasons why certain sex differences manifest themselves in the context of the high-tech industry. And eventually, because of his opinions, he was fired. In reading the Reuters article where the firing was announced, the CEO of Google apparently stated that the gentleman in question had promulgated these incorrect, these problematic gender stereotypes, and then the VP of diversity. Wow, I didn't know that such a position truly existed. I thought it only existed in the deep recesses of my sarcasm and satire. Well, the VP of diversity also said that these are problematic, incorrect assumptions about gender. Notwithstanding whether his positions are veridical or not, you might imagine that it's quite problematic that an employee in the United States could be fired for writing what, if you read the memo, is a very reserved, restrained, polite, somewhat tepid memo wherein he's enunciating his opinions. You would think that a company that is as driven by innovation, by broad thinking, by thinking outside the box as Google would certainly be happy to see someone who took the time to enunciate his positions in the manner that this gentleman did. Now, as I understand it, I'm not sure, this has not yet been verified. I think the gentleman in question has a PhD in maybe computational biology, so certainly he might be someone who might know one or two things about sex differences, or maybe not, I'm not sure. But in any case, this reality, this idea that there's this great animus that is felt by the politically correct class whenever you discuss sex differences is something that I have experienced throughout my scientific career. For those of you who don't know, I founded and developed the field of evolutionary consumption, namely how to apply evolutionary psychology in the context of consumer behavior. And most of my social science colleagues, and certainly most of my marketing academics colleagues, have typically viewed my work with great derision and animus. Now, of course, that is changing because it is becoming more untenable to reject the idea that our human minds have evolved through this process of dual process of natural and sexual selection. There is no other game in town. But of course, much of the social justice warriors, much of the politically correct class, reject biology, reject the idea that sex differences exist. This is exactly how we end up with a situation where I have to appear in front of the Canadian Senate to discuss how a particular bill regarding gender identity and gender expression might ultimately be dangerous to someone who teaches evolutionary psychology. Well, here we have a case of an employee who used findings, I mean, without citing them, but used findings from neuroscience, from evolutionary psychology, from psychology in general, to argue as to why some sex differences might exist, and he was fired for it. And again, I would invite all of you who have not yet read the memo to go ahead and read it to see how measured it is in its tone and style. And so in any case, is this a good thing? Do we really want employees to be afraid to ever utter a word that might otherwise end their careers? This is the reality we're facing. We're seeing it in politics, we're seeing it in academia, we're seeing it on Facebook, we're seeing it in bars, we're seeing it in companies. The monster of political correctness is truly creating a chilling environment for everyone. Now, some people think, oh, but you know, professors are protected by tenure. I mean, yes and no. There are many ways that you get punished in academia. Even if you have tenure, you don't get job offers elsewhere, right? So again, the point is not to try to come up with a competition hierarchy to see who is more likely to be the martyr for speaking politically incorrect truths, but rather the idea is, do we wish to live in societies that purport to be free, but yet they're everything but free? Now, I come from the Middle East where, saying the wrong thing might get your head chopped off. And so we might think that, well, in the West, we're much better off. Well, in a sense, yes. This gentleman doesn't risk his life in writing this memo, but he certainly risked his livelihood. He lost his livelihood. He might lose his reputation. He might lose his friends. And is this a fair outcome or not? So in any case, I do hope that when Google does end up putting up my talk, some of the people in question, the CEO of Google and the VP of diversity, will spend the 50 or 60 minutes, the duration of the talk, to actually listen, to watch my talk, to see how I tackle sex differences, and then they can decide whether the idea that there are innate sex differences that exist, whether sexual dimorphism is a reality that defines Homo sapiens, they can decide whether that is supported by science or not, and whether it is worth having someone fired for uttering truths that most serious evolutionary scientists fully accept. There you have it, folks. I wish you all a good week. I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.